I'm Kiera Morgan. Thanks for joining me on this episode of Coffee with Kiera, sponsored by the Human Being in Newport and Lincoln City. And today I'm excited to be here with Paula Miranda. She is the executive director of the Port of Newport. And we thought it was about time that we got a little update on what's going on here at the port. Hi, Paula.
Well, hello, how you doing?
Wonderful. Thanks so much for joining me here today. I know you have a busy schedule, but it's always fun to hear about all the exciting things that the port is doing. So, first off, tell us a little bit about yourself and about the port. I don't think people realize how much the port is in charge of.
Yeah, well, thank you. First of all, thank you for giving us this opportunity to talk a little bit about the port. Let's start with the port. We are what we call a special district. Most people get real confused about what type of government we are. Folks think that we are part of the state. Some people think we're part of the city. Well, we're not part of either one of them. We're a special district. So we're actually created just like the fire department. It's for a special purpose. And the purpose in general is for economic development and logistics opportunities. So some ports own airports and railroads and marinas, terminals, things like that. Some on recreational marina. That is the part that is more in touch with the public and it help usually financials on the financial side to subsidize other areas of economic development. Each port is it's created for the community which is served, so they're all different. Some may have all of those things I mentioned, some may have some, but not all. I would say here in Newport, the only thing we don't own, as from what I mentioned, is an airport because the city actually owns the airport here. But we do have recreational facilities, which include a marina and RV park. We have a terminal for cargo. We have also commercial fishing and other type of commercial vessels, as well as in industrial parks, as we call it, which is served for other industrial related services. And with that, we also have land. Most ports are big landowners. And although I don't feel like we have enough land, I would say here in Newport, we're probably one of the big landowners. We do own the facility, the land where the Oregon State University Hatfield Center is located. We leased that to them back in the 60s. We also own a little portion of the Oregon Coast Aquarium land, and they built their own facilities, both of those. And we also built the facilities for NOAA about 12 years or so ago, 13 years, I mean, at this point. So we built them the entire facility from the buildings to the terminal, and we actually have two full-time employees working at the facilities to maintain, and that's part of our contract with them that was built through a bond, as well as some lottery funds from the state. And currently, we keep some of those funds separate from our general funds because we have bond
Mhm.
obligations. Um, so, and other than that, all of our other facilities, even though we try to keep some sort of separation internally so we know how we're doing with each one of those facilities, they are all commingled into a general funds. So we have a general funds, and it's one thing that I really try to get my staff to understand. There's no separation. Oh, I'm South Beach, I'm North Commercial. No, you international terminal. No, we're one port. We're one port, and we make sure that we're all doing well. So, and actually, we started trying to really have our staff work in all the different areas of the port so we can cover each other. So cross training, it's a
Mhm.
big thing for us
That's
now.
important.
And because sometimes when things are slow on one end, they may be busy on the other, and vice versa. So that is really helpful. So I have noticed that that really help um, folks here within the port to feel like more included,
Mhm.
and not feel like, well, we're from a different area, we don't belong, type thing. With that said, it's we have times when things are down in one area too, because like say it's fishing season here, and the RV park may be slow because it's rainy and there's not many people utilizing. And then there are times like now in the summer it's super busy over there, and the revenues are up and things may be a little bit low here. Although right now we're going through tuna season, so it's still busy. We have been also busy at the international terminal, on and off, because we have this project with the wave energy from OSU,
Mhm.
and we are trying to bring in more business to the cargo side of things. We have had the long distance fleet,
Mhm.
the fishermen utilizing that dock. The intent of that international terminal is to be a multi-use terminal.
Mhm.
There's always this distress put into few folks thinking that we may, you know, not allow them to utilize that anymore once cargo comes. Well, the intent is to actually continue utilizing service for all of them,
Mhm.
because sometimes when things are busy in one end, it's slow on the other. So we want to create some sort of um, a good logistical way to make sure to include them all. Let's put it this way. So that's just a very general information here. There are a lot of projects going on and all. We can talk some more about it. As to myself, I've been with this port for about 5.5 years now. I came from other ports. I've been with ports now for, gosh, I think 22 years.
What got you interested in doing this work?
um, so I used to work for a title company. I used to be an escrow officer. I worked for both residential and commercial escrow. Because I had worked on the commercial side of escrow, I knew someone that worked for the Port of Portland back then, and they needed someone in their properties department, someone that understood about real estate, you know. And I ended up working there for 5 years and helped them with their contracts, all real estate contracts, as well as some developments within some of those facilities, and managing all of their leases. They had some large industrial leases. So that's sort of how I started. And then from that, I kind of end up going to another port where I literally wore every single hat.
That's a great learning
It
experience, though.
truly is. Sometimes folks don't realize working for a smaller port, you have to do everything. So
Mhm.
you have to learn. Yeah. So, and I work for that port, which is used to be Port of St. Helens. Now it's Port of Columbia County, for 12 years before I came here. So,
And this is by far the best job you've ever had,
absolutely.
right?
Couldn't wish for better.
So let's talk about some of the things that the port has going on right now. Some docks, you've been working on Port Dock 7 for a few years now, raising money to get some things replaced. Like everything else in Newport and other areas, we're facing time
Yep.
of things needing to be replaced. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so being a port, of course, dock work, it's an ongoing issue. We, just like I would say every port in the state of Oregon, we have just old um, facilities, falling apart facilities, quite frank. What most folks don't understand is we are funded differently than the state, the cities, the counties. Most of the city, county, state are usually funded almost 100% through property taxes,
Hmm.
or taxes of some kind. For us, we are more of what we call a quasi government. So, like for instance, this year we have a $79 million budget, mostly because that includes the $34.5 million for Port Dock 7, which I'll talk about here in a minute. And out of that, we only get $125,000 from property tax. So
That's a lot to raise.
it doesn't even cover one full-time employee by the time you take into consideration the benefits and so on. So that is the start of it. So that makes it real difficult for us to raise funds to get things done. We, of course, have tariffs for the use of our facilities, which most of the time folks think it's unreasonable. And most people don't understand that by keeping some of those fees super low, which has been kind of the case in the past a lot, it still is in some ways, but we're trying to get better about it because it's like, low fees mean no maintenance,
Mhm.
barely any maintenance. Yeah, we have a couple bonds, some funds that it was put out to the public, and those are usually for major project, like we had with the international
International
terminal,
tournament.
and started mostly because that one project, we had contamination issues because
Hmm.
most people may not know that, but there were two vessels, two concrete vessels that were buried underneath the international terminal to build that in the past. Well, one of those start leaking and
Hmm.
created a huge problem. So most of that cost that went into redoing that is just so we could contain that leakage. As a matter of fact, that one ship was removed and that dock was completely rebuilt. I know people get upset because we haven't brought much cargo yet, and they think that's the only reason they put the money into that bond. Well, that was part of it, but a good part of it was related to taking care of the environmental problem too. So we had that bond. We have a bond with NOAA, but the bond with NOAA it's paid by the lease, so
Hmm.
that one does not go to the public. Recently, we actually refinanced both the NOAA and the international terminal bond, so we did save the public a lot of money by refinancing, so that was a good thing. But we still got to get the fees. So we have mortgage, we have wharfage, we have leases through the port. And then we have the RV park, which bring in a lot of cash to the
Hmm.
port. That really helps us subsidize, and that's quite frankly is part of the intent when you have a port has recreational facility.
Hmm.
And but we try to spread the wealth, take that money and put it in several different locations. Some facilities may make less money or may not be, it's more to do with the service we provide. So anyway, so there's a lot of deferred maintenance, quite frankly, through our docks. Like here, for instance, with Port Dock 7, uh, this facility was built in the early 70s with the intent of being a recreational facility.
Oh,
Now,
we've grown a little bit since then.
absolutely, now you imagine you have this small slips, that was built for recreational boats, and then we have commercial vessels coming in. And now the commercial vessels keep growing, and
Hmm.
which is something that the Port of Toledo does. Good for them. They keep growing our vessels. However, we got to put those bigger vessels somewhere, and it's not about just size. It's how much they can take in, the
Hmm.
weight, the everything that goes with it. And then you got to look into it. Are we deep enough for these new vessels? Because they're putting more weight, so they're
Hmm.
dragging more. So you got to make sure we have all of that. So with that said, The other thing that a lot of folks don't realize, having a coastal port requires way more maintenance than a river port, because we have salt water, we have other
Mhm.
things that occur in the salt environment, that it really creates
More
more
deterioration.
deterioration. So that really have put up quite of a difficult, difficulty for the port to maintain. And with $125,000 we get a year, I mean, it goes up maybe 3% a year. It's not going to cut it, right? So often we do depend on grants. That's what we do. We do a lot of loans. Thankfully, we have a real great relationship with the state. Yeah, so the all the facilities here get deteriorated real fast because of the weather here, the coast, and again, this Port Dock 7 here, the fact that was built for recreational vessels, uh, kind of got it stalled from all the larger vessels, getting increased and so on. And not only that, but we have storms too. And
That we do.
because of those storms, we have pretty much every year we seem to lose several linear foot of
Mm.
our docks. Just the past 10 years, I think putting it all together was something like 200. That's a lot.
That's a
That's a lot
lot.
of dock, right? And so the problem with that is that when you lose, though, we try to keep it as much as we can, even if it's falling apart, because when you go get permits, they make you double on your mitigation if you're creating new. Where if you
Or
just
just
replacing
replacing,
the
it's a
old,
different story.
it's a whole different kind of mitigation. So it costs more, right?
Hmm.
So anyway, so we've been like really trying to figure it out, how much longer can we keep this? Well, about 2.5 years ago, or three at this point, we got an engineering report. Um, and they basically told us, you have probably no more than 5 years left on this dock. And that is if you put probably a couple $100,000 into fixing several pilings, which we did. So we put a couple $100,000 into fixing several pilings, adding pilings. But it's getting to a point where the wood, you have no place to nail it anymore in several places, because they're like so,
It's like a sponge.
it's
It's not like wood
in a
anymore.
real bad shape. So anyway, so we end up hiring a firm to look into a design and permitting and so on and so forth. So we spent, altogether probably around $400,000 for that process, not counting the other report we already have done. And we started that process. And so the estimate we got is about $34.5 million. And they're still looking, a good chunk of that is dredging, because when you're rebuilding, you have to dredge that
Yeah, you have
berth.
to go down even further.
And we had to see, what would take to get the materials out. So we end up having to do a what they call a sediment sampling, and was something that has never gotten done here in Yaquina Bay that deep. They made us go 100 feet deep for the samplings,
What?
because they think there is like mudstone, what they call a mudstone here, which is something you cannot just take it and put it in it dispose anywhere. You have to have a proper disposal. So we just finished that sampling. $1.1 million just for that sampling, not
Oh
counting
my
everything else.
gosh, that's
A lot
crazy.
of people think, oh, you guys are not doing anything about it. You just don't care about us because you're not taking. It's like, so far, I think we spent about $1.6 million or more just on trying to get there, not even
Hmm.
getting close to getting there.
And there's windows. There's in-water work windows that
Yep,
you could there are only specific times that you can do this work in.
that's
And there's
correct.
so many rules and regulations when it comes to working in and around water that it's not like building a house. Oh, we'll just clear the land, pour the foundation, and build it. It's a lot different.